Hi, Swati.
Kunal, you'll indicate to us when to begin. Huh?
Now you all can hear me, no?
Yes.
Okay.
We cannot hear Zubin. Does he know he's
Yes,
muted?
we can.
Okay.
Yes, we can start.
Let us begin today's proceedings as we normally do with an invocation to sage Patanjali, invoking the memory of Patanjali, his subject, and our Guruji's life and work. So please let us say the invocation together. Fold your palms, close your eyes, and look within. Om. Om. Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopa-karotam pravaram munina patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi आबाहु पुरुषाकारं शंखचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतंजलिं हरि ओम। Bow down your head. Exhale. Bring your palms down. Lift your head. Open your eyes. Namaskar and a warm welcome to all of us joining us today on our beloved Guruji's 7th Punyatithi. Our Guruji, Yogacharya B.K. Sayangar, was a lot of things to a lot of people. He was a parent, father for his 6 children. He was a grandfather. He was an author of so many books. He was a friend to the people around him. He was a speaker on the subject on so many platforms. But the one thing that our Guruji always identified himself with was that he was a practitioner. He was a yoga practitioner. He was a yoga explorer of his own universe within him. And today, on this day, to evoke those memories, yes, we have 6 senior students joining us from all over the world who have walked the path with him. Yes, they were near him. They have lived with him. They have shared coffees with him. Anyway, more of that in their own words. And I would like to invite them to take us on this journey. Yes, in the 1960s, 70s, when his book, Light on Yoga, yes, which we all know today, had just come out. In fact, the institute where we all studied was also not there. Yes, Guruji himself was the institution. So I would like to invite these 6 women today, 6 very senior students and teachers from all over the world. And I would like to very briefly introduce them. Yes, before I hand over the platform to them to start these discussions. We have with us Agnes from Holland. In fact, she was just 12 years old when she was initiated into yoga by a student of Guruji's, Donna Holleman, yes, in Breda, south of Holland. She met Guruji for the first time in 1971. You can imagine, in London. So almost 50 years ago. And she came to Pune subsequently to study with him for many months. In 1971, there was no institute. So you can imagine Guruji's home in Subhash Nagar, where people know it was just one room and a kitchen. And ever since, yes, she has followed Guruji in Europe and in India. She kept coming. Then we have Penelope from the UK. Guruji used to call her Penny, so I will also call her that today. Penny met Guruji in 1973 in Mumbai, and subsequently she traveled to Pune, where our Mother Institute had just come up. So it was 1975, and ever since she has walked the path with Guruji. Then we have 2 very senior students and teachers from Mumbai. Mumbai is the place you can imagine where, Guruji's books, Light on Yoga, Light on Pranayama, were conceptualized. Anaita, yes, who is with us today, is the daughter of Sam and Freddy Motiwala, who most of us know very well in Mumbai. They were the first teachers authorized by Guruji to teach public classes in Mumbai. But in 1960, when Anaita met Guruji, you can imagine she was a young kid of 10 years. So Guruji has been not only her guru, but also a father figure to her. She has, traveled with Guruji, been the backdrop of so many of Guruji's demonstrations in Delhi. Anyway, more of that from her own mouth, but I would like to say one more thing about her so that the young generation gets a sense of what it was to touch a teacher's heart. On one Guru Purnima occasion, Anaita did Shirsasana for 1 hour in front of her Guruji. Anyway, to move on, we have Swati Chanchani also from Mumbai. She's based in Dehradun now, in the north of India. People who are familiar with the book Yoga for Children will also know her name. She has co-authored the book with her husband, Rajiv. Swati was interested in yoga. She went all the way to Kerala, South India, to learn yoga from Swami Purnananda. And it was Swami Purnananda who advised her that, why have you come all the way here? When you are living in Mumbai, there is a teacher, great teacher, who has authored the book Light on Yoga, who teaches in Mumbai. Swati, of course, came back to Bombay, and she immediately enrolled in Guruji's class, where he was teaching at that point in time, Campion School. As some old students will recall, Guruji used to, rent out the halls of schools, public schools in Mumbai, and he would teach public classes there after the school hours. So Swati started her journey there. She has not given up. Our community is fortunate that we have such teachers who are sharing their experiences for the last 50 years with us. Then we have Julia from Australia. She first met Guruji where Guruji was teaching Yehudi Menuhin in Switzerland in 1971. But it took her 5 more years to reach Pune, and the institute had just come up. She has not looked back ever since. She has made it a point to travel to India to be with Guruji every year since 1976. Last but not the least, we have Patricia Walden, all the way from Boston, USA, with us. She also met Guruji in Boston, in USA, very briefly in 1976. But that first meeting had such an impact that that same winter, she traveled to be with him, to learn with him in the institute, which had newly come up in Pune. She has been in the community, a stalwart teacher ever since. And I'm very happy that we have, all these people with us today. And more than like I saying anything, I would like to now open out this discussion. And I would like you to lead, to say, what are your first memories of those times of meeting Guruji 50 years ago, 55 years ago, and in some cases 60 years ago? So please, if one of you takes the lead and starts this event today. Yes, Agnes.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. It was in London, 1970, when we went with a Dutch group to see Guruji for the first time. And we had only done a few asanas, and then he said, come to the front. So I was always in the front. And I don't know why, but there was some connection. And there was Angela Maris and Beatrice Harten and Silva Mehta, the really group who guided Guruji in the time when he was in London and Gstaad. And stay there. So all the time I was there, but Angela couldn't walk so well. So I walked away and I had to take tickets. People have to have tickets on the side of the room. And I was doing that. And then he said, hey, come back. So I had to come back. So, the contact was immediately straight, strong. Even after the class, he walked again. And next to me. I was shocked. Oh, Guruji, next to me. Come to Pune, he said. Oh, okay. So in January in 1971, I started classes with Guruji and had every day classes. And the main thing was he wanted to train my shoulders, my arms. My back was like, some people say, you were like chewing gum. I was bending like anything. And every day it was balancings, back bends, balancings, back bends. So he said, if you go home, don't go anywhere. I'm training you, rest in the afternoon. And sometimes in the night there were classes or there was something nice to do. But that I tell you later, okay?
Yes, Agnes, I'm happy you started describing what it was, how it was with him, with Guruji during those times. Yes. Yes, Penny.
Ja, er komt nog. Ik zei nog, er komt nog meer.
Yes, Penny.
Ja.
I first met Guruji in 1973. I'd already started practicing yoga from a book. It was Light on Yoga and another book. And I always thought that there was something missing. And I went to a local class. And then I was asked to join a teaching class. I thought I could never possibly teach. But I thought if I go to a teacher training class, I may learn more. And I think the classes started, it was from the adult education, where they were trying to recruit yoga teachers, because mainly it was Keep Fit. So I signed up for this class, which started in September. I think in January, there was this whisper going around that Sir was going to arrive. Guruji then was known as Sir. So I thought, well, I wonder what all this is about. So I signed up and arrived. We were all standing there in 3 rows. I always put myself at the back because I was tall and also very closed and shy. And he arrived. I was quite surprised. I'm not quite sure what I was expecting, because he had, when he walked in, he had Western clothes on, except for chapels, and he changed. Then he walked up the rows and stood behind me. And he said, as long as you are afraid, I cannot help you. Those words have always been in the back of my mind. And I thought, this is my teacher. So I never looked back. And from there, I went to Pune, then I went back again. I went to the classes in Mumbai, and then I visited Pune practically every year, and I stayed there for different periods of time, and I'd slept in all of the rooms downstairs. Wonderful times.
Thank you, Penny. Yes, please go ahead, Swati.
Unlike many of my colleagues here, I did not have spend much leisure or recreational time with Guruji. Mine was a strictly guru-disciple relationship. Even from the very young age till the last days, when I was already in my late 50s, I was a very small person and he was a very big person, and there was always a huge gap, I was very differential to him and maintained that kind of relationship towards till the end. And my very first moments, I remember very well at Campion School. I sat on the steps and watched the class for 2 hours. I knew nothing about yoga, so what could I have understood or seen? I don't know. But like metal drawn to magnet, I went up to him at the end of class and said, "Sir, may I please join?" And he said, no, the class is full. Please, sir, can I join? Then he said, I cannot say no to a young person. And I remember those words now. I always think that if such a great man, such an evolved person, such a learned person could teach beginners, then who am I to not want beginners? I always am very happy to teach beginners and, start from the basic. I remember that moment. So anybody else, go ahead.
Yes, Anita.
Well, as Zubin mentioned, my parents, Freni and Sam Motiwala, were one of Guruji's oldest pupils. And my journey started because my mom, at that time, when my youngest sister was born, I was barely 8, and she had a very bad back. She had a fall and her back was injured. So all the doctors had told her that you'd have to go in for a surgery. And they were contemplating, and they said, even she was very young, she was in her 30s, and going in for a surgery was very traumatic. And at that time, back surgeries were not so well known. So anyway, we were deciding, and suddenly, and then it was almost decided that, okay, she is going, because she could hardly bend down. And the doctor had said, if you bend down, you'll become a cripple. And she was scared to do anything, any movement. So her parents stayed in Pune. So before the surgery, she said, let me go and visit my parents and say, because I won't be able to go for a long time. And when she went to Pune, her father, who was staying in Pune, he said, I've heard of some Mr. Iyengar in Pune. I don't know how he is. And you know how it is, some people, and he teaches and, he's cured some people. Why don't you try? At that time, we felt there are so many cracks all around. Who would this man be? And, whether her back would get worse, taking a decision like that. But, then they decided that at least go and meet him. So mom and dad went to not the institute, but to his place. They rang him up and then they went over there. And Guruji saw her reports. He wasn't even interested in seeing the reports. He put them aside like he usually does. And he just, manipulated her back and all. And he said that, okay, just bend forward. She said, no, I'm not allowed to bend forward. I cannot do that. So he said, this is what you want, then go away from here. And if you want to do what I say, then you can come to my class and you can come to Bombay and my class is on so and so day, and it is on so and so place. So that's how it was. So even when they came back to Bombay, they were wondering what they should do. But then they decided that, okay, let's go and give it a try. And that is how their journey started. And they went to the class. And of course, Guruji, it was difficult. She couldn't do anything. But Guruji, the way he worked on her, and slowly and gradually, it didn't take so long, but slowly and gradually, she found the difference. She found so much of relief. And within about 9 months, she felt so much better. And then mommy and daddy were absolutely that this man has something in him and we have to go ahead. And then they became so close to him. And that is how we also, because we were too young, and we used to go to the class with him, with mommy and daddy would go, but he said, no, they are too young, they cannot join the class, but we would go to watch. And after some time, after a year or two, he said, okay, now you can get the children. And that's how our journey started with Guruji. And it was not only in the classes. He was a strict disciplinarian, of course, in the classes, but after classes, we used to meet outside, and he was a different person altogether. And as Zubin said, he was like a father figure throughout our life. We'll give you more experiences in our talk.
Yes. And thank you, Anita. And when Julia and Patricia met Guruji, the institute was already born. So please, if you can share some of those memories. Yes, Julia.
I'd been studying with another teacher in India, and I was in Switzerland to see Krishnamurti, and we heard that Guruji was giving a public class there. And so we thought we would go. And from the moment we went in there, before he was there was these lines of people, and it was all very strange to us to see somebody who taught in this kind of a way. And we got there, and then it was Donna Holloman and maybe Bianca or somebody else up on the stage. And he came, and his energy was so electrifying from the first moment, but I was in a different mindset then. So it was a bit too overwhelming for me at that time. So I went back to India to my other teacher. And then gradually I realized through some people who had also been students of Donna Holloman, who I knew in India, and they showed me more of what his teaching was like. So eventually I wrote to him, and he said to come. And then when I got to the Institute, he was, I believe, in South Africa in September 76. And Gita was teaching most of the classes, and Prashantji. And the classes with Gita and Prashant were great, and everything was fine. And then one night I was lying there on the floor in Shavasana, and I sort of half opened my eyes, and I didn't have my glasses on. And there was this man with a dhoti on, sweeping around the room like he owned the place. I thought, my God, who's that? And of course it was him, because he looked different from in the book. So I wasn't able to recognize him straight away. And he was very hard on me for the first, I was there for 3 months the first time, very hard the first 6 weeks. But then at the end of that time, I knew that he was teaching at a yoga conference in Panchgani, and I told him I had already signed up. And then he said, oh, well, if you're going, you can come with me and some of the Indian ladies, Kali Dastur and so on, in the taxi. And from the minute he was in the taxi with us, everything was completely different. He was just such a fun person, and not that he wasn't fun in the class, but the class was very hard and very intense. But in the car, it was just fantastic. And we went up there, and when we got there at this convention with people from all over the world, the organizers, although they knew they had invited him to come, they didn't have a room for him. So then he knew other people, he knew people everywhere. So he knew people in Panchgani, and in the days before mobile phones, he was able to arrange for all of us to stay in the house overnight. And then we all walked back quite a distance to where the convention was. And then I believe it was even after dinner, they suddenly asked him, oh, Mr. Iyengar, could you please give a demonstration now? And he was, oh, okay. And, somebody had to loan him some shorts, and he went and gave a fantastic demonstration. And I still remember when we walked back to the hotel, it was just fantastic. It is really hard to put the whole thing into words, but he was so totally natural. And one of the things that was so fantastic about him was, when you were there, even if there was a big class, you practically felt like you were the only person there. And he was just so aware of everything. But anyway, at this convention, it was in the old days when you could decide what class you were going to go to on the day. You weren't assigned to a particular class. And he wasn't so known at that time, of course. And after the first day, word quickly spread, this teacher is absolutely fantastic. So everybody started to go to only his class, and they didn't want to go to the other class. So one of the organizers, I was standing there, the organizer said, look, this is kind of a problem because, everybody wants to go to your class. They don't want to go to the other class. Yet some of the teachers they're not happy. And he just said, well, what can I do? So people continued to come to his class, and they were all fantastic. And but there was one funny thing after that. At the end, I must have gotten a ride with some other people and gone back to Pune. And when I saw him at the next class at the Institute, he said, you didn't tell me you were going to go. And I thought, well, I didn't want to bother him. I didn't think he would notice I was gone. So I thought that was quite touching. That was quite sweet, really. Anyway, that was after that whole convention, our relationship changed, and as well as being very, whatever you want to say in the class, very dynamic, strong, amazing classes. But there was also that other side of him that you did get to know more easily in those days, of course, because the classes were like 20 people. So anyway, it was great.
Yes. And Julia, I know you said that Guruji knew a lot of people, but I think more than that, he would kind of slowly, with his personality, like you said, in the class, he was completely different, and whilst having coffee, he was completely a different person. So, Patricia, you had a lot of coffees with. So please, Patricia, if you can unmute yourself. Yes.
He taught me how to make coffee and how to drink coffee, and I've been drinking coffee ever since. So I was teaching in 1974, and so teaching yoga then was very different. So I rented a hall at Harvard, and beautiful room, and I put notices out all over Cambridge, and a bunch of people came for my first class. So and I had an assistant, Victor Oppenheimer, who some of you know. So we turned the lights down very low. We made a circle, and then I would sit in the center of the circle and give instructions. Do this, do that. I never got up. I never touched anybody. I couldn't see their faces because we had the lights off. So we called our yoga flow and glow yoga. So, but then 2 years later, we had been reading Light on Yoga, and we heard that it was coming to Boston. So we were so excited, and we, looked at the pictures in the back of the book. I went to the back bends, and I was doing Ekapada Rajakapatasana and all that. So all those back bends. So when he taught the first class, I was shocked. Because first of all, we're in a big hall that was brightly lit. And he stood up on this big platform with his hand on his hip. And he said, do all of you teach yoga? And many people raised their hands. And he said, more yoga teachers in Boston than all of India. Now I'm going to break you down. So the stunning thing was he got off the platform and he started walking around. And then I was hearing slaps. I was hearing all kinds of sounds coming from the students. And he would come up in front of you and look right in your eye and say, lift here. And then to make a long story short, one of the second class, he was up on the platform, and Mary Dunn's mother was one of the demonstrators, and Priscilla Neal, who some of you may know, was one of the demonstrators. So Guruji stood in Samastiti in Tadasana and raised his arms up, and he said, if you keep your armpits open, you'll never get depressed. And I was going through a depression, and I thought, like we all thought, oh, he was teaching this for me. So after that experience, I thought, wherever he is, I'm going. So I showed up in Pune in 1976, and his teaching was very different. And for a while, I felt scared, but then I thought, he cares. He cares what his students are doing. So one of the mantras that came out of that period was Bika Sayangar, bang, kick, and slap. So some of you might have heard that. So anyway, I call 1976 in Pune the beginning of my yoga journey. And I've gone to Pune almost every year except for 4 years. So Guruji's teaching was my life. It was my life then. It's my life now. And I feel very fortunate that this extraordinary being came into my life. I felt true blessings. So that's the short story.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you all for starting this thing. But most importantly, we can sense, from what you said, that equally you have learned both from in class as much as outside class. So we would like you to talk about this a little more. What are your feelings, about both, moments inside class with him and moments outside class with Guruji? Yes,
Yeah.
Swati, please. Please unmute yourself. Yes.
Through all my years, besides learning asana and pranayam from him, I thought all the time, more than asana pranayam, he was teaching how to conduct oneself, and all the time he was building character. And I'd like to give 1 or 2 examples. In my earliest days, I joined, as I said, and he said, okay, young person, join. Then a week later, there was one lady, she had a niece who was a little older than me. So one other young girl also joined a week after I joined in Campion School. And he took us along for 1-2 months. And then one day he said, do full arm balance. I was terrified. I mean, I'm not a Westerner. I'm just a laloo little Indian girl, I put my hand, but I said, I have to do it. He's saying you have to do it, so I have to do it. I put my hand on the floor and I jumped. I think I was pathetic. I did not jump more than a foot high. But I felt the strong hand grab hold of my leg and haul me up. And then he said, good, put me down. Then he went over to the other girl and he told her, jump. And she did not jump.
Uh-oh.
Next weekend, yeah. And next weekend, I returned to class, but she did not. So that was a test. Oh my God, if I'd failed that test, I would have no face to show. And on another occasion, this was maybe a year and a half later, in Pune, I went for, in those days, people find it hard to believe, intensives could last even a month and a half, 2 months. Yeah, I was there for 2 months, at least 2 month intensive. And one day, so many back bends. Guruji would take so many back bends. He'd hold us at the waist and up and down, up and down. Then Geeta would have a go. Then Prashant would have a go. Shah would have a go. So we ended up doing about 50 back bends at a stretch. I was exhausted and I started crying. And he strode, how he used to stride over. He strode over to me and he said, crying. I said, yeah, crying. I thought he'd have some sympathy. He said, I said, he said, crying, go home. So I sobbed a little and continued. What else could he do, But no sympathy, crying, go home. So that's over. Anybody else?
Yes, but he had this way. I think that's why the coffee after the class helped a lot, because then he would reveal another side. He would kind of, tell us what were the reasons which he couldn't say in the class. So I always felt that this coffee time was an excuse, for him to show us his humane side, which he couldn't kind of reveal in the class to us. Anyway, if yes, someone has, yes, please. Anaita? Yes. Anaita, Patricia, Agnes, all have something to say. Anaita? Yes, if you can.
Anyway, as we're talking about coffee time, when we used to, by the time we had started going to class, and when we were in class, Guruji was a different person. He would work on you, and at that time there were no props, but Guruji was our prop. If he had to do Viparita Dandasana, his knees were there, his foot was there, he'd climb on us, he'd mold us into anything, if it was Kapotasana, if it was Mandalasana, everything. And he was strict at that time. But as soon as we'd go out after, because he used to come, as all of you all know, he used to come to Bombay on Saturdays and Sundays. So we used to go for the Saturday class. And after that, what would he do in the evening? So we would make it a point to go out with him, mom and dad. So at one time, sometimes even we children would join, he said, Gary, get the children along also. Chalo. At first, we were a little wary, and we said, what is this? Every Saturday going for the class, and our friends would say, come on, come out. We said, no, we have to go for a yoga class. Nobody knew about yoga. They said, what, you all are being PT on a holiday also? We said, but by then Guruji was, literally working on us, and we used to make stories. He used to tell us stories, and it was so interesting. So we said, oh, you can go for your movies, and we are going out with our uncle in Pune. That time he was our uncle. So Pune uncle. And then he became sir. So anyway, so when we used to go out, I'll tell you one instance of his tolerance. We had gone to a club, and we had all ordered some food, and Daddy was asking everybody, what will you have? So Guruji said, we were just a few of us. So Guruji said, whatever it is, coffee of course was there and something else. So when it came to asking my sister and myself, he said chicken sandwiches. So Daddy made eyes at us, and Guruji heard that. So he said, Arey, children want to have, let them have what they want. So he said, no, sir, we cannot order that. So he said, no, order it. So it was ordered. And then, again, talking and joking and making those jokes. And suddenly, Dad, he picked up the sandwich, and he put it to his mouth, and Dad said, Guruji, that's chicken sandwich. So he made no fuss. He put the sandwich down. He took a tissue. He just took it out and put it at the side. And we kept saying, sorry, Guruji, sorry, Guruji. And he said, no. Next time also you'll order that. You all want to have chicken? You all have chicken. I'll have this. This was my mistake. I was greedy and I picked up the plate. So I should have asked before taking it. So there were so many instances like that, And he would also come on trips with us. He would go to Mahabaleshwar, he would go to Panchgani, everything. And Guruji was a different person. And anything we would ask him, Guruji, could you do this? Could we do this? He was like an ever-ready battery, never saying no to anything, always willing to do whatever. So I remember once when we were in Panchgani, and, I think all of you all have seen that, that photo which is there on the cliff where he's doing the headstand. So suddenly we saw him walking towards the edge, and with his dhoti. And of course, he had his shorts down. That's what he always has. So he took out his Kolhapuri chappal, and before we could know it, we thought maybe he's trying to look over the cliff. But before we knew it, he was on his head. And we were all wondering as to what's going to happen now. And then after staying there for some time, he confidently came back and ha, 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 how he usually laughs. See, dekho, hum to nahi darta, chalo aap log bhi karo. Arey, what? Karo, we couldn't even walk till the edge. So that's how Guruji was. And he was fun all along. And, we were talking about Guruji going abroad. What happened was when he first went abroad, he used to go in his dhoti, and people knew him in his dhoti. But the first time, and mom and dad, at that time, people used to go to the airport to leave them and put garlands around him. And when he went abroad, suddenly when he was going abroad, we saw Guruji in pants and a top and shoes. So we were quite this thing. And we didn't see him because we didn't go, but Daddy used to take a lot of photographs. So that's when we saw that Guruji, he was a changed person. He was trying to anglicize him because he was going abroad. So there are many instances like that.
I'm so happy, Anaita, you brought this point across that, in class, today, Iyengar yoga is known as a yoga with props. But before all these props came into existence, it was his effort to, know where to support the person. Like Patricia beautifully told us that, nowadays people feel that, props is the only support, but he would support with his words. like this beautiful thing he said, that lift your armpits, and such things. So I'm very happy that, it's revealing of, so many things of his personality, which went into molding the responses which happened later for his students. Yes, Agnes, I'm sure you want to say a little more about those times. Please unmute yourself. Yes. And then Patricia.
All right now? Yeah, you can hear me? I can't hear him. I can't
Yes,
hear you.
we can hear you.
Okay. Those London classes in the 1971, 2, 3, 4, 5, all those years he came every year to London to teach the teachers. We had a sort of meeting after at Hyde Park. Hyde Park is a very beautiful park where we sit there, we took blankets, we took coffee, we took all homemade cookies or sandwiches because Guruji was vegetarian. And because he was vegetarian, lots of people started also not eating meat anymore. He accepted it so much. So he told us stories about what happened at home with the girls, with the men, with the people around him. So that was very interesting. And after Hyde Park, we went home. And then the next time, we made a trip, like going to Stonehenge, Stonehenge in England. And there he was doing poses all between those big stones. There are many photos of it. And then he was also joking, come and see here, come and look there. What would mean those stones? He wanted to tell you something about what is the interest of people knew many, many years ago. They were so much developed up another way. Okay, that was London. Then I have another story. When he gave a demonstration, there were so many lights on him. And you know how hot that is? And he also said, oh, my skin is burning because it is so painful. And then, again, drink and give him coffee. And especially not only coffee after the classes, but also a hot cloth, a little towel. I made it warm and then he could wash his hands. And then he changed completely and talked to people and gave advice. And like other people also experience that Guruji is like a father. He cared. He was always with you. He was interested. And okay, I have another story later on.
Yes, Patricia. Please unmute you.
So I have a coffee story. So the first time that Guruji came, second time Guruji came to the United States, he did the first convention in San Francisco, and then he came to Boston after that, and he was staying with me. The whole house was full. Jawar, Birju, Kali, we had a full house. And Guruji took me aside one night and he said, I drink coffee. And I said, yes, sir, I heard that you drink coffee. He said, I get up at 4 a.m. and I'm not an early morning person. So he said, 4 a.m., I want coffee. And I said, yes, Guruji. And he said, make the coffee before you go to bed, put it in a thermos and leave it outside my door. So I thought that was really compassionate, but it showed his, his like for coffee. And then on that same trip, he was working so hard, and we came back after a long day. We were also teaching, and he was going around watching us teach. That was the way conventions were done in America then. So we came back one evening and we had just had dinner and we thought, oh, let's go to bed now. It's so late. So we were sitting around having a wonderful conversation. He said, come on, let's go and have ice cream. And I said, but Guruji, that's quite a distance away. And he said, we're walking. So we walked 2 miles to Harvard Square to get ice cream. And then we had to find a place that didn't have eggs in their ice cream. So his energy was extraordinary. Yeah, he was old to us then. We were tired, and he seemed to be able to go on forever. So he had the teaching side, which could be very stern, and then the social side, which many of us have experienced. He was a lot of fun.
Yes, Julia, please.
I wonder if I could just say a few words at the moment. After Guruji died, I realized that I had a couple hundred photos that my husband had taken of Guruji in 1976, 77. And we decided to put these into a book. And one of the reasons why was we were missing him, right? And we wanted to share the photos with other people. And then we thought it would be more interesting to share these kind of stories from everyone in the book. And, you know, I was shocked, but recently somebody told me that some new students to Iyengar Yoga have no idea what the word Iyengar, that it's even his name. Like Hatha Yoga, they think Iyengar Yoga, they don't even know what it is. So this was kind of shocking to me. So this book will help people to get to know him a bit by telling more about what it was like to study there in those days. It also has sections on Gita Ji and Prashant Ji, medical classes, which were so important to him. And another thing is that the book is also very inexpensive as an ebook, and then you can see the photos even better, and you can blow them up, and it's quite a good way of seeing it. And Gita Ji, fortunately, she was able to write a foreword shortly before she died, and a fantastic foreword. She really appreciated what the book was doing, and she said that we've all got to read it. So Guruji, BKS Iyengar, and his institute in the 70s, I think it really will give you a feeling of what it was like then.
Yes. Thank you, Julia, for that. And most importantly, actually, you are the people who have actually seen Guruji, Gita Ji, and Prashant Ji teach together in one class, unlike any of us later on. Do you have some memories about that? I mean, now it's unthinkable that, you know, all three of them were in one class in those days. Since you mentioned, you know, those photos. So yes, Penny, please.
One of my last conversations with Gita Ji, we were talking about the early days, and in the classes when Gita Ji, Prashant Ji we were all beside one another. And I said to her, do you remember how long we used to stand for Tadasana? It seemed an absolute age. And then the back bends. And I can remember when we'd leave and walk down those few steps, we couldn't feel our bodies from the waist down. The legs were just, had been worked so hard. And she laughed and she said, yes, they wouldn't have stood with that. They wouldn't stand for that now. And then I'd just like to say something about the props. My first classes, there were no mats, no belts. And when I went to Mumbai and I went to a class, my first experience was a chair, not sitting on it, going backwards over this chair. And in that class, I think was Birju and Jawahar. They were young boys. And he said, I'm not sure the time, 5-6 minutes. I got backwards over this chair and I thought, this is excruciating, because I was tall, very stiff in the upper body. And he caught me glancing at the clock. And he said, Penny, it's not the pose, it's the clock. Stay there. So that was my experience about props. And I can go back to actually later when he was in London, and the Taj Hotel Group had opened a hotel and they wanted a yoga teacher. And he said, Penny, I want you to teach there. He said, and we'll go and see the place. I said, fine. I said, I'll call a taxi. He said, no taxi, we'll go on the train. We'll go on the train. So we went on a bus and 2 trains to get to Sloane Square area. And we went into the Taj Hotel and they took us down to the gym. And he looked around and he said, well, there's no windows. And they said, fine, you teach here, but you won't enjoy teaching here. Then he saw the treadmill. He had his dhoti on, his chappals. So he decided to get on the treadmill. And I thought, oh my goodness, his robes get caught in it. He enjoyed it then he got off the treadmill and then he went to other machines. So he was always interested in anything that was around him wherever he was. So those are a few more of my experience with Guruji.
Yes. Yes, Patricia, please unmute yourself. Patricia, please unmute yourself.
So I wanted to share, of course, something about Guruji. So in 1987, he came back to Boston and we had an afternoon program on therapeutics. He was going to teach us how to work therapeutically. And long story, very short. So the teacher had to bring their student up onto the platform. And Guruji said, he didn't say anything about the patient, but he asked the teacher to show what she was doing for this woman who eventually found out had depression. And when she was doing her standing poses, she was wholehearted. She was muscleizing. She was lifting her chest, but her eyes, something in her eyes. So he said to Marlene, what's wrong with your patient? What's wrong with your patient? And she said, depression, Guruji. He said, depression? Yes. So he took the woman and took blocks and bolsters and put her in Setu Bandha Sarangasana. And he said, now let her alone. And then he went on to other people and their problems. And then 20 minutes later, he came back to the woman who was in Setu Bandha. As I said, she was 20 minutes. It was a long time. And he said, stand up and look at her eyes. And we all saw, I mean, there were a lot of people, the people in the back didn't see, but we could see a total transformation in her facial expressions. Her eyes were open. Her chest was open. So that was a moment of awe and a wonderful teaching moment. So I wanted to share with you one of the ways that he worked with depression, and he could see it right away, as all of you've described. So that's a memory that will always be with me.
Yes, Swati, please go ahead.
Come back to your question about Guruji, Geeta and Prashant all in the same hall, teachers together. And also what I said earlier, I felt all the time he was character building and teaching us about right conduct.
Yes.
He was as strict with his children as he was with us. And on one, Geeta, he was, when I joined, Geeta was already accomplished and he was teaching Geeta ji and Prashant ji how to teach, to training them to become teachers. And on one occasion, I think Prashant might even remember, you know, in the institute, there are that stone floor and those big square blocks of Kota stone. And he was making us do back bends. So the hand had to be on one line of the stone and the feet had to be on the other line of the stone. We had to be that compressed, that narrow. So he asked us to do it. Then he asked Prashant also to do it. And Prashant said, I can't, he's so tall, you know, he said, I can't fit into that space. And he yelled at Prashant. He said, if you can't do it and you dare expect your students to do it, I mean, he, just to his own children, just like that, in front of all of us, So those are some of my memories. He can go on. Somebody else can talk.
Yes, but even more to himself. Penny was talking about, for his students, Guruji used to take long Tadasans or long Viparita Dandasans. But I have a memory of, a demonstration of Guruji's in 1990 when Guruji was almost 72, just before his 73rd birthday, of Guruji staying in Parshva Shirsasan. That is Shirsasan and a variation. Yes, Parshva Shirsasan for 6.5 minutes on each side. So, if he was tough with all of us, he was doubly more so with himself. Anyway, Agnes, I want to especially, ask you to evoke some things. Agnes and also Anaita, even before the institute, Guruji and the family used to live in one room, and Amma, Guruji's wife, whom we lovingly called Amma, as we remember her. If you have some memories of, those days, yes, please. Sorry, Agnes, Agnes, you want to go first? Okay, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Yes, now it's okay.
You told already that we were in his living room, dining room, sitting room, studying room.
Yes, it was all only one room. Yes.
Yes, everything we did there.
Yes.
So I told you that I was studying there every day. He was teaching probably for me the most difficult poses, balancings and backbends. But one morning he said, you follow me, we're going to do forward bends. Okay. He said, you do with me 20 minutes Paschimottanasana. So there we went, 20 minutes Paschimottanasana. Then you don't know what happens with you. You become in a complete different world. The variations with the Janushasana, etc., was different, but this Paschimottanasana was really killing. But he also said, we're going to do head balance. And in that day, when you were studying and trying to become stronger, 20 minutes head balance was very hard. But then he got a bit, 20 minutes is a long time. So we started talking, chatting about politics. And we were laughing in head balance. In Shavangasana, I didn't work, but it was also 10 minutes. And then Halasana, 5 minutes. And then every movement with the legs, And let me see what, then we finished the class. But I know another story, if I have time. Can I stay some more? Yeah? Okay. In Gestad, in 1971, Guruji was teaching Yehudi Menuhin, and Yehudi gave him a hotel. He could sleep there, and the only thing he wanted, fruits. So every morning there was a big bowl with fruits there. And he told us, only a few students were there, like Donna and Victor and other people. And he said, come and eat fruit. But we're going to practice first. So on his balcony from his hotel, we practiced. Then we start eating fruit. Then we brought Guruji up to Yehudi Menuhin's flat or chalet. We waited there in the grass doing some practice again. And on the hill, when the hill was so, you do practice against the hill. So we were having fun. Then he came out and then he was very glad. He said, what shall we do? And then I told you, we're going to Lausanne or Geneva or make a trip to the glacier. Glacier, you understand? Glacier, yeah? Okay. So you do this trip and sometimes he said, come on, let's have a coffee. Let's have something to eat. So there was a restaurant and we were with a car. And we sit in the restaurant and we wait there and we order something. But the friend who had a big car had to put his car away. And that was quite a long way. And he didn't come. But the food was already on the table. And then some of us wanted to start already. And then he said, oh, no. The driver, Francois, it was, I think, He has not come yet. We all start together to eat. And then we have food, we have something to talk. And then he turns around and he says, look at this man, see how he walks. And we're looking, which hip is painful? Is it the right or the left? Then the next person, what is with his feet? What is with his back? You know, he was completely in the body and teaching us, but he also wants us to see just in the normal world. I mean, not yoga class. So he was full of giving, learning, and loving.
That is so beautiful. So beautiful, Agnes.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yes, Patricia, please.
So I wanted to share something about Guruji not in the classroom. So this is another trip to Boston, and he wanted to go shopping. At the end of a trip, he would want to go shopping to bring presents back to his kids and his friends and family. So I took him to this very nice store, and Marion Garfinkel, some of you, I'm sure, because she's kind of a legend, knew we were looking at clothes and looking at sweaters, and she's, oh, Guruji, my back hurts so much. And he said, just keep walking. Oh, my back hurts. He said about 3 times, oh, my back hurts. So he found a table full of sweaters, and the table came to about her hip, her groin area. So he said, bend onto the table, place your torso on these sweaters and extend your arms. So she did a half Uttanasana in Filene's. That was the name of the store. And he adjusted her in the department store. And when she got up, she was pain-free. So he would do asana anywhere with anyone that was willing.
Yes, Julia. Yes.
I don't think we've really said too much about his work in the medical class, which is so important. And I think a lot of people didn't realize how much of his work it was. I mean, at the end, he was doing medical class every single day, or 5 days a week in Pune. And so you couldn't imagine how old he was when you saw how he worked. I mean, he was in his mid-90s, and it was just phenomenal. And I was also in the medical class myself, and you couldn't believe how he could still be so giving to everyone. He didn't turn people away. He was helping people in that way right up until he died. And he I don't know, it's hard to really talk about it because it was such a big thing. And a lot of people don't seem to know much about it. Yeah.
Yes, I'm very happy you brought this up, Julia. Really importantly, I think the new generation who have not kind of, like you very rightly mentioned, that they only know the word Iyengar, but they don't know the person behind the word. And they associate Iyengar only with props. But actually, as Prashantji in one of his recent classes very beautifully put it, that it was these 2 wings of responsiveness and responsibility. His responsiveness and also his responsibility behind the idea, actually. This is the idea behind all these props, all these things that, today we see. So it's a whole journey. Because, you know of a time, like you're all describing, of a time when there were no props. It was just the idea of helping, of being responsive. So, yes, I'm very happy that you brought this up. Yes, Anaita.
Since we brought this up, I'd like to tell you that, I used to practice. I was very fortunate that Guruji had called me in 1970, and I used to practice at his home. So he was a different person, and he'd just say, come on, today is back bending session, or today is forward bending session, like one of them said. And one day it was the Chakrasana, this thing. So he said that, oh, come on. You have to just follow me. If you want to come to my place and if you want to do yoga with me, you have to just follow me. It was just impossible. Then he gave me a small prop. You have those low beds. So he said, okay, I'm giving you one advantage. You can do it from there and I'll do it from the floor. And after a few, it was impossible to cope up with him. So that is how he was. But later in 1984, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And of course, I was devastated because I was quite young and my children were young. And Guruji wrote a very sweet letter to me. And he said, don't worry, everything will be fine. And what you cannot cure, you must learn to endure. And he said, come to my medical class, come to Pune when you have finished with your treatment. And that's when I went there. And I saw, as you mentioned, the compassion in this man. Of course, he worked on me. He was so good with me. And, he was so giving, so loving. And he wanted to give so much of himself, but not only to me, to everybody around. And that's when I saw, this man is giving so much of himself. And after a few weeks, when I was ready to leave, he told me that, Anita, this is all that I've taught you and you should be fine. And now you go back and you teach others. And that's how I started teaching in the medical classes. And I've enjoyed doing that. And I've always thought about Guruji and what he has taught all of us.
Thank you, Anita. Really,
Should we mention about Yehudi Menuhin?
Yes, please. Please.
I think Agnes spoke about Yehudi Menuhin. Let me tell you that Guruji was extremely close to Yehudi Menuhin. And one fine day we heard that Yehudi Menuhin is coming to Bombay. So Guruji was so excited that, Yehudi Menuhin is coming to Bombay. Of course, the phone calls came to Freni and Sam and said that Yehudi Menuhin is coming. Freni, we must do something. And what should we do? And how will we entertain him? So we decided that then afterwards, they came to a conclusion that, okay, let's have it on your terrace. We have a terrace. So he said, let's have it on your terrace. So they were so excited. And then he said, should we order? What should we order? So he said, order? How do we order? No, we have to make the food. And we were wondering because we were quite a few of us, the full Iyengar family, our family, all his teachers, some of his students, senior students would be there. So he said, no, we will do it. We will do it. Come on. So the Iyengar family came early that day in the morning. And he said that we will make this. Everything was done. And even from the grinding of the masalas, that time there were no mixers also, grinding on the stone, everything was done. And he was so innovative. Then we said, we don't even have big utensils, Guruji, everything is over now, even to make, he wanted to make that curd rice. So, he saw he saw a steel table on the terrace. So he said, come on, make it over here. He said, over here. He said, yes, nothing will happen. Come on, make it. Anyway, and then he said that one thing is a must. We have to order son kelas for Yehudi Menuhin. He loves those bananas. I think they're the red bananas. So he said we have to get 2-3 looms of those. And that is what we are going to offer him also after he has the sweet. So that was all arranged. And of course, we had the meeting with Yehudi Menuhin. Guruji was very, very happy. Prashant gave a beautiful recital. And he was presented with a violin from Yehudi Menuhin. And he had his food. And after food also, he just, we said that, would you like to wash your hands? He's saying, no, I love the aroma which is coming from my hands. And he kept smelling them. And he thanked Guruji also. And Guruji was so happy. You could see the happiness on his face that he could do something for someone who had done so much for him. So then when he was going and then when he was leaving, of course, the bye-byes and the goodbyes were said. And when he was leaving after eating everything, he was leaving. And that time we didn't have a lift. We were on the 3rd floor. And when they were walking down, Guruji, of course, was walking down. And suddenly he said, "Arey, son kela bhul gaye." So he ran inside. He got 2 looms of the son kela. And he said that, no, Mr. Menuhin, you have to take this back. So even he was wondering. So he said, yes, of course, I'll take it back. He had to make Guruji happy. So he took those. And I wonder what they did with the son kelas because he had to go back to the Taj. But it was such a wonderful gesture that, Guruji wanted to do everything to please him. That's how Guruji was.
Yeah.
Yes, Guruji was equally enthusiastic outside class also. Yes. And as Anita was talking about Yehudi Menuhin and Agnes was showing us some of the old black and white photos, yes, of Guruji teaching Yehudi Menuhin.
Right, yeah.
Start, yes. Yes, I hope people can get a sense, yes, of what it was. And of course, with Julia's book of the Institute, where people can get a sense of how the teachers used to make their bodies into props. And most importantly, I hope that, you get a sense of the whole picture of, on one side, yes, we were having coffee. But on the other side, as you heard from Agnes, that, even during this coffee time, there was some learning, there was some teaching happening. Yes, there were some observations about humanity. So, it was very revealing in all those moments. So, very happy that, we get a sense, especially for the new generation, what it was to have lived, yes, walked with Guruji in those days. Yes, please, any last words?
Yeah. Well, Guruji also told us that his wife was his teacher. She was there and he taught her so he could learn from her.
Yes.
He was so kind and so peaceful to wait, to let Guruji understand what happens.
Yes.
That was
because, people forget that, before YouTube and before all these social media, he was alone in giving 10,000 demonstrations all over the world in different platforms. Like, all of us are together from different parts of the world, Australia to Holland to UK to Boston, where Guruji has given lecture demonstrations.
Yes.
Howard, Patricia can, mention Howard University, as one of the platforms where he gave a lecture demonstration. Yes, Patricia, please, if you can mute yourself. And that will be the last.
So many of you have probably seen his demonstration at Harvard. So what was remarkable is before the demonstration, he gave an hour and a half talk on the 4th chapter of the Yoga Sutras. And many of us were just learning the first 3 sutras in the first book. And we only had the hall for a certain amount of time. So at one point I had to go, stop. You can imagine that was really hard to do, but I had to because everybody wanted to see his demonstration. So he got it and he took off his beautiful clothes and he proceeded to do standing poses, inversions, advanced back bends, Viparita Chakrasana, Tadasana, Urdhva. He did all the back bends. He didn't do arm balancings. He did forward bends, but the most incredible poses were his back bends, not having warmed up. And he wasn't young then. And then I will never forget how he ended his demonstration. So he was in Adho Mukha Svanasana with his back facing us. And then he jumped into Hanumanasana and took his arms up and had this big smile. And the whole, I don't know how many people were there, maybe 400, 500. Everybody smiled and laughed with him. We were in a state of awe. So I thought, this is a precious memory that I will never, ever forget. His love of yoga, yoga philosophy, asana, the whole thing. We are so fortunate. And I feel like I grew up with Guruji, and many of you are saying in some ways the same thing. You came to yourself through Guruji's teaching.
Thank you. Yes, Swati.
But just as a concluding thing, whenever I think of Guruji, I think of the story of the elephant and the 6 blind men. So these blind men would touch the elephant, and one said it's like a hose, the elephant is like a hose, one said it's like a wall, one said the elephant is like a pillar. And all of them were correct, but none of them had a complete picture. And it's the same with us. He's given a part of himself to each of us. And if we meet like this often, we can put together a fuller story.
Yes, but we, even these small glimpses, give us a sense, because the picture will never be complete. Over the years, we want Guruji's memory to be so adaptable, so that different generations get a sense of what, was behind this. Like you said, he was alone. Like Agnes beautifully reminded us that, Amma, Guruji's wife, was his mirror. Guruji's wife was, giving him that feedback, which none of his colleagues, none of his students could give him. So yes, it's very important to kind of see his journey from that perspective. So thank you. Yes, I'm very happy that you mentioned that we were so fortunate to have walked with him
Yes.
in those days. Yes, Penny. Yes.
I think I would like to say that Guruji accepted everybody. He never turned anybody away.
Yes.
Although he, in the early days, that had the reputation of slap, kick, etc., the slap was actually really to bring you some awareness to that area that maybe you weren't connected with. And I think if you accepted his teaching, then he would help. He would help anybody.
Yes. And I remember, since you mentioned this, that even a journalist who came to him, who interviewed him, when he went home, that person wanted to do yoga. Because, after the interview, he would show him some asanas to make him feel better,
Yes,
to make him breathe better. The driver of his bus, had a lesson at the end of the journey to make him feel better. So, he touched everyone very deeply. I think we should conclude. But I hope that, like I said, the new generation realizes, yes, what it was to have been touched by him and also the subject which he projected. So I invite Prashantji to conclude with some concluding remarks.
So, well, I thank you on behalf of the Institute and on behalf of the family for your participations. I thank you, Penny, Julia, Agnes, Patricia, Swati, and Anita for your participation. And of course, Zubin for coordinating it. And I will just make a final statement. Usually we have been Guruji students because we were interested in yoga and we liked Guruji. But let me tell you that aspect, that in his teachings from 1940s, he had students who did not like yoga, but he was teaching them yoga. There are many who did not like him, but he was teaching yoga. There were also some people whom he did not like, yet he was teaching yoga. So, as you said, that somebody said that Guruji was teaching beginners, and why not we teach beginners? Guruji was not only teaching beginners, Guruji was teaching beginners of every strata, every age group, every strata physical to intellectual. And he was also teaching in one of the schools. The school authorities asked him to teach, and they only gave him backbenchers, troubleshooters, notorious students to be trained. And he took the challenge and he taught them. And we were all interested, and therefore we did our yoga. But many were there who were not interested in yoga, but they were forced to do by school authorities or maybe by parents. But then later they changed. So this is the thing, that many of them, they did not like yoga, but he taught them. What happened later is a different thing. Many of them did not like him, he taught them. Many of them did not like him, but could not leave him, is also true. Many of them did not like his nature, but still they stuck to him, is also true. So, well, there is much to say about Guruji's teachings and to remember his life. So we have commenced this time with this panel discussion. So let's try to have more about it, and let's try to bring various aspects of Guruji as a person, not only as a teacher, not as an authority in yoga, but as a person. Well, as a family member, I can be telling you something. And I have seen him outside teaching others what he taught, and I read him as a teacher. I saw him teaching others. I read him as a teacher. So it's a marvelous thing to read the map of his life. Anyway, we have commenced today with this panel discussion. I'm very happy for all of you to have participated. And I think we need to open this out more and more to understand our Guruji as a person in every sphere of his life, and of course, every stage in his life. So I thank you very much on behalf of our family, on behalf of our institute, the Mother Institute. So thank you very much. I'm grateful for your participation. Namaskar, all of you.